a signer of the Declaration of Independence, a president of the United States, and an entire Union Army that had just won a battle, but yet retreated. This is the location that we're at today, here at Berkeley Plantation. We're actually a guest here at the house, interviewing a longtime tour guide here, someone with a lot of knowledge. And hopefully, we can bring a little bit extra to this video so that when you come out here to visit for yourself, you're going to know exactly what you need to see. Well, it's not very often that I get to talk to a historian and get them on camera, or have one reach out to me really and ask me if I would like to come out and film at their location. But I was able to here at Berkeley. Berkeley Plantation out here in Virginia, if you drive quickly, you're going to miss it. There's not too many signs. There's signs for Shirley Plantation and other places like that. But out here at Berkeley Plantation, it's really in the middle of nowhere. Now, I've read on blogs like Johnny Banks, for example, where he talked about feeling, when you walk out here, feeling like you're in the middle of nowhere, and then you're all of a sudden reminded that you're in the modern times by a noise or by the electrical plant that's across the way. This place truly is a step back in history here at Berkeley.
The 7 days battle and McClellan being pushed back by the Confederates, unable to capture Richmond, he decided to change his base per his side of the story and sent his troops south toward the James River. He wanted to establish a base here along the James River. And so they headed this way, fought a big battle just about 12 miles from here at Malvern Hill in Henrico County. And then he sent advanced troops to kind of scope out and settle. They knew Harrison's was abandoned. The owner went into the Confederate Army. Most of the plantations around here were abandoned because the war was being fought right around here. And so the advanced troops arrived late June. They fought the Battle of Malvern Hill, and then the mass of the army starts heading this way. And it started to rain as they headed out, and it became a torrential downpour as they made their way through fields of corn and wheat, which had been in full bloom by that point, and unfortunately were destroyed as part of that march. Not just all the bringing of equipment and ammunition, but the soldiers foraged and kept the wheat and the corn and that type of thing. And this, one of the cool stories from that march, the mud was so bad with all that heavy equipment coming through it and the water and the torrential rain. There's a story of a mule that literally collapsed down to his ears in the mud. Wow. Had to be rescued from the mud pit. And so they get here July 1st. Most of the army came, relieved to get here, but still raining. They had lost a bunch of equipment over that course of that Peninsula Campaign. Uniforms, etc., were in disrepair, and they arrive here and they don't even have tents. They're trying to set up these just cloth over bushes, using the wheat sheaves that they've just taken as beds. So it was a pretty demoralizing and difficult time. And then once they got encamped and settled, things got a little better. Those supply ships start bringing in new tents. They all needed new uniforms thanks to the lice that they had picked up along the last few days, and they settled the encampment. Now, right after they settled here on July 2nd, the encampment came under fire. Jeb Stuart had actually captured the high ground about 4 miles from here on Evelynton Heights, and he had one howitzer that started firing on Harrison's Landing. So they had to start almost right away fighting again. They engaged Stuart and his howitzer, and it ran out of ammunition. And so they took off. They had been expecting Stonewall Jackson, who was on his way here. They thought he would reinforce them. And if they had captured the high ground, it really could have changed the whole direction of the war. But they didn't. And so the Union was able to establish the position. Their guard was from Herring Creek, which is the creek up as you come into the plantation, over to Kimmages Creek, which is a few miles down the road here. And so they kind of reinforced that boundary, held the high ground, and Jackson tried to incur into it and establish that high ground again and was not able to do that. So it really did make a difference on what happened here.
Now, when George B. McClellan came barreling back down the river to this location, he wasn't running per se, because his army had just had a victory. For all intents and purposes, the army itself had won fight after fight. It had done what it was supposed to do. Even though those fights were hard fought and at some points seemed like victory was not going to happen. But they did exactly as they were supposed to do. Still, they got on ships, they sailed back down the river, and they redeployed here. Now, according to McClellan, he was setting up a new base, which is controversial. A lot of people like to say he wasn't setting up a new base, he was retreating. And that's not just rebels that were saying that. Northern soldiers in his own camp would write about that and talk about how they didn't feel like they should be retreating in the face of the enemy. Newspapers depicted him during his campaign for presidency as sitting on a turret on a ship, staring at the soldiers at Malvern Hill as they fought, essentially make him out to be a coward. Reality is, he was a general with very, very complicated ways of thinking, and he wasn't a coward by any means. He just did not want to continue to fight in the position that he was in, and his intelligence was telling him that the army that was facing him was a lot larger than what it really was. So, with that intelligence, he thought if he redeployed his men here and set up a new base, that he could get them back up to full strength and fight in another location, which is essentially what he tried to do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to find that road that we were told about earlier. I was told that there is a road out here that leads to the cemetery where a lot of the family members are buried. And the actual landing for Harrison's Landing is directly out in front of that. So now, as you can see, the land stretching out behind me here as I'm going down the rows of farm fields. I'm in the actual area of where one of the wharfs would have been for Harrison's Landing. When you come out to Berkeley, the road, or the gravel road that leads you out to the river, would make you think that that's one of the wharfs, but it's not. The positions actually start over here where I'm at right now, and they stretch themselves off in that direction there. That's where the actual wharf begins, right here. Civil War soldiers would have come ashore right here where I'm at today. Those Union soldiers would have made their way up this bank off of ships and set up camps in the fields directly behind me. This is Harrison's Landing. All of this stretching in this direction. I'm actually standing at one of the locations where a wharf would have been built for the men to come ashore when the ships pull alongside here at the James River. It's pretty amazing to see how far out the James River stretches from this point. And you can tell there's definitely enough depth to this water for a larger vessel to come through here and moor alongside of a wharf. Over here, upwards of around 140,000 Union soldiers would come ashore. They would inundate these fields and these farm fields all around, and they would set up camp and wait for orders. When the general got here, his idea was to set up this almost impenetrable fortress. He wanted breastworks all around the surrounding area, leading into where Berkeley was and into these fields here. But as was pointed out before, Jeb Stuart got here first, and he was on high grounds off in that direction over there and started lobbing shells over in this direction. Thankfully for the Union soldiers here, Jeb Stuart did not bring a large force with him when he did that. And they were able to get here, set up their camps, and start putting in defense works stretched out in front of me in a almost like a U shape around this area, which is really what protected and saved them. So now you're a Union soldier, and you've been fighting the 7 days battles, and you've been getting your teeth kicked in, and you're tired. You don't have proper clothes on. Maybe you're infested with fleas and ticks, and your feet are hurting you. And you get here and you think, oh great, we're gonna prop up a tent by the river and we're gonna have a nice couple of days to rest before we do anything. And that does not turn out to be the case. As soon as you get here, you're put to manual labor, digging fortifications for your protection. Elijah Hunt Rhodes would encounter George B. McClellan out here while he was going into a working party. And Elijah Hunt Rhodes would write about that in one of his letters. Elijah Hunt Rhodes recalls, "This morning, all troops were put to work upon the line of forts that have been laid out. As I was going to the spring, I met General McClellan, who said, 'Good morning,' pleasantly, and told our party that as soon as the forts were completed, we shall have rest. He later on recounts, soldiering is not fun, but duty keeps us in the ranks. Now that's one soldier out here, Elijah Hunt Rhodes. He goes on to be an officer in this Union Army, and his story is told widely with a broad stroke, if you will, by Ken Burns in his documentary. He focuses more in on the letters and the telling of the way Elijah saw things, just like he focused in on the soldier from Company H. But Elijah is just one patriotic version of a soldier that's out here in these fields. There are other soldiers out here who write stories, write letters back home that talk about how they are discontented with what they're doing. They are angry with having to retreat and be out here on these banks. They are tired of sitting here in camp waiting to fight. They want to get back at it or go home. And that is what George B. McClellan's facing here. And then the president visits. President Abraham Lincoln comes out here twice. And one time, he does a review for this army that's out here. And McClellan tries to embarrass him. So Lincoln comes out here for a review. And George B. McClellan thought it would be funny to give him a horse that was too small for him. So Lincoln's out here on a horse that's really short, really small. Lincoln's long legs are dangling off the side. His pant legs have been pulled up on one side, and his hairy leg is showing. And one of the private soldiers actually remarks in a letter back home, seeing the gangly long Lincoln dangling from a tiny little horse. He does his review. Now, a review is basically a spectacle. There's no real purpose behind it. It's a tradition. The commander-in-chief can come by to any unit and do a review if he wants to. A officer can do a review of any unit if he or she decides to. And Lincoln wanted to see what the status of the forces were. And he's not really a military service member. He has no experience in it. He's never gone to a school. He's never been a cadet. He has no clue really what he's looking at. But what he's trying to do is he's trying to bring the morale up of the troops, to show them that he's in the field with them, that he's there in the fight, even if he's not physically on the ground with them. A lot of presidents do that. As he's out here, there's a little boy who's playing the drums for this review. He's 11 years old, and he's rapping away at his drum set. Now, he's extremely proud of that drum set. He's had that drum set with him throughout the entirety of the 7 days battles. Now, I have a kid at the house that's almost that age. I can't imagine my kid standing at Malvern Hill with a drum set, beating away, and having the fortitude to continue to rap those drums and not turn around and run the other direction. Most kids that age probably would not have the bravery to stand at the face of death like that and just continue to do their duty. But this young boy did. As a result, in 1863, Willie Johnson would end up being the youngest recipient of the Medal of Honor for his bravery in the face of the enemy during the 7 days battles. Unfortunately, though, fast forward to 1941, it's speculated that Johnson dies of old age and is one of the last surviving veterans of the 7 days battles. They know that he died right around that time, but they have no idea where he died. They have no idea where he's buried. And to this day, it's a mystery where the youngest recipient of the Medal of Honor is buried. Oddly enough, he never even applied for a pension. Now, it's somewhere out here in this location where I'm at right now. You can't really tell because of the bushes that are out here. But according to the historian out here, George B. McClellan would have made his headquarters right here in this field, which is not too far from the house, which is right there. Now, you'd be wondering, well, why not the house? He was a little Napoleon after all, and he was known for taking up large mansions for his headquarters. Well, unfortunately, that large mansion, which was in disrepair, became part of the signal tower and was also a field hospital. There wasn't much they could do for some of those soldiers that were brought here, but they would bring them inside there and work on them. Out here in these fields, directly to my left, that way, there were tents that were put up also, because there weren't enough dwellings around here to make into hospitals. So they created hospitals from tents, and these soldiers that were suffering were actually out here in July and August in the sweltering heat, suffering. And I suppose it probably wasn't a cold snap like there has been the last few days here in Virginia. You can imagine 90-something degrees, 90+% humidity, and then came malaria. Malaria became the prevalent thing out here at these field hospitals. And that letter that she read talked about sunken eyes and the sickly men that were raising their heads up from their beds inside the tents. That was the sickness of the day at this camp. They were dealing with a massive influx of people becoming ill with malaria. And then, of course, there were other things like dysentery and the flu, pneumonia. Many people died here as a result of sickness versus a result of a scar or wound of some sort from a battle. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed being here and seeing this place for the very first time. I've never actually been to Berkeley before, and when Tammy and her husband got on X and contacted me and told me about this place, and then actually gave me the shocking news that they had it approved for me to come out here and actually film the grounds, not only was I honored to come out here, but I was pleased and overjoyed reading up on the history, knowing what all took place here. So I hope you took a lot from this video, and I hope that you actually come out here, if you go to anywhere in Virginia, out here to Berkeley Plantation, see this place for yourself. Until next time, History with Waffles.